Hi and welcome. I'm Sima Shapiro, your host and producer of Activism in West Hartford. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are in our fourth segment of 6, and this is called Calls to Action Part 2. We're going to be joined by 3 newbies, people who were called to action since the new administration, and we're going to explore a little bit more about why did they do this and what are they hoping to accomplish, what's the name of their group, how can you find them, and what would they like to accomplish in the near future. So please join me as I welcome Nina Arnold, Jim Chapdelaine, and Rosemary O'Neill. So, Rosemary, the floor is yours. Tell me a little bit about your group, your call to action, the name of it, and what your mission is.
Whew. My organization is called Swing Left, and I got involved. I've never been an activist. I used to be a newspaper reporter and thought activists were kind of annoying. Showed up at meetings, were gadflies, and I just never thought I'd go there. But after the election, despondent as everyone else was, I said, I've got to do something. What am I going to do? And I heard about this organization, Swing Left. And basically, they said, if you live in a blue state, as we do, we find you a House district that's near you that we think we can swing in the midterm elections. So here's something we can do. We can swing the House of Representatives in 2018. And I thought, well, okay, that makes sense to me. I could do that. And they said, we're going to have a series of house parties this weekend in whenever it was, February. Go to a house party and find out. So I look, no house party. So I said, all right, well, I could have a house party. That's easy. So I signed up to have a house party, and 2 days before the house party, I said, I better look at how many people are coming. So I looked, and there were like 42 people signed up, in addition to all my friends I had invited. And I said, I better limit this. We had almost 60 people in my living room.
Wow.
On a Saturday from 6 to 8. And people with their notebooks wanted to learn more about it. And it was just really energizing. And so we don't have a lot of regular meetings. Basically what we do is we are once a month going to visit our district, which is the 19th district in New York. We're going to go knock on doors, just talk to voters, kind of lay the groundwork for when there is a candidate to run against the incumbent, who, by the way, who won by less than 10% in the last election. And we're just going to set the stage, go out there, talk to people, and our goal is to flip that district. And that's our one goal. We don't have a whole lot of other things going on other than that, kind of just laser focused on that.
So what can you tell me about the national group?
It started by a group of volunteers. There are 300,000 people who are part of Swing Left.
All across the country?
Yes.
And where did it start? Do you know what state?
I don't know.
Okay.
The founders I think they're in a couple of different states.
Okay.
And some people, their closest swing district is miles away. I mean, ours is 2 hours away. And there also, I think, was one in New Hampshire. I chose the New York one. But I also spent time in Vermont, and their swing district also is New York 19. So I want to get the same kind of effort going there and keep it going.
So will you build up steam as you get closer to another election? Is that how you work, or you want to just keep the momentum? How do you want to roll?
I don't know. Obviously, the more people, and a lot of people don't like the idea of knocking on doors and going up to strangers. But I think as we do it and we get used to it and we tell other people about it, more people do it. I don't feel the need to have thousands of people, but if I have committed people who will go regularly and tell other people, and it's going to be tough. We're going to try to get people registered. We're going to get people to answer their door, hopefully, and talk to us. And we're not really looking to convince Republicans. We're looking to get the Democrats who don't turn out for the midterm elections to go out and vote.
So let me ask you an interesting question. So what happens if, in your desire to swing left, the candidate who's left isn't someone you desire?
The Democrat will be our candidate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else we need to know?
I think that's it for now.
Okay. Jim.
I'm a member of Indivisible Connecticut in particular. We're affiliated with the national group, and all the various indivisible chapters and groups in Connecticut. And I got together, I formed it sort of arbitrarily after the election. I found myself curled under my bed in the fetal position for a few days, and my phone was ringing. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I wondered, why are they calling me? Because I don't have any answers. And then I started looking for a model that would work for me. So Indivisible is based on a simple pamphlet that was written by 3 congressional aides on how to oppose what's going on now. It's a very inclusive kind of a roof, umbrella. We welcome anyone from conservatives who feel morally failed to progressives who feel disappointed in the outcome of the election to everyone who voted in between. We're pretty organized despite my participation in the group, and we have meetings every 2 weeks, a leadership meeting, then a big meeting, and we send people to every rally. We're sending people to Washington for the climate march, for the science march, and what else do you need to know about it?
Do you have a topic du jour? Do you have a topic?
No.
Is it
Unlike
broad-based?
Rosemary, and I was at her house party, and it was excellent.
Okay.
Great snacks, too.
Okay.
We're not? No, we don't. We're broadly oppositional, so we have like a rapid response team. So today we are on Twitter. We do more than tweet, but we're responding to the threat to the Affordable Care Act today. But with this administration, you have to be ready to act very nimbly and quickly. And so we have a long game and a short game.
What's the long game?
The long game would be to take back the House or Senate in the midterms and to motivate people to get out and vote. And we're happy to work with other groups. There's no proprietary portion of this movement. I think all of it kind of comes out of the Women's March and the inspirational moment that created for basically a whole nation of failed people.
Who determines what the subject matter is that you pursue at any given time? Because there are a lot of things
because
going
I'm
on.
the king chief. No, we have a leadership team.
In Connecticut.
Both, there's a national team, and this is why the brand worked for me, because
Okay.
I don't want to I'm not capable of creating something from scratch. There was a very light template that
Yep.
was available that we could customize to Connecticut. And Connecticut's going to sort of blue state. And so we work by rewarding our members of Congress and our senators, whoever our representative is, and hectoring and harassing them if they're not doing what we like, and then working with them to help them if we can when we agree with them.
When you agree with them. So do you feel at this juncture that you've been effective, or do you have yet to see?
Well, it was Indivisible who showed up at Jason Chaffetz's meeting and started telling him to do his job. Yesterday, Jason Chaffetz said, I'm not going to run. And he's the one who's been carping about Benghazi for, I don't know, 8 years or something.
Definitely.
So I think, yeah, it's a pretty effective thing. But it's not just Indivisible that's effective. This very broad grassroots movement is very, very effective and it's very alive.
This
and
is
you can see it
correct.
with both these people here. So
How many members do you have to date?
in
Approximately.
our particular chapter, we have 2,000.
And how many are in the country, or have you any clue?
Millions. I mean, in Connecticut alone, there's probably 50,000, I'm going to guess. I'm just making up numbers, to be honest with you. But I know Greenwich has are you in it? 4. I'm done. Go. Yeah. So, and with that, I'd like to introduce Nina.
So go ahead, Nina, tell me about your group.
So Jim was talking
what
about
you said.
grassroots groups that started post Women's March in Washington, D.C. So friends and I went down for the march, and that's when I really started to become involved with the political climate. It wasn't just after the election, but it was something that with those 2 months, wondering what can I do, because I was so dismayed by what had happened. So.
So what did you choose?
So
what group?
we actually came up with an idea to start a group in West Hartford, and that's ROAR, which is the rapid, organized, active response based on one of the speeches at the Women's March through Michael Moore, talking about rapid response being important. And we thought we wanted to do something, and driving back to Connecticut from DC, we came up with that acronym. So we had our initial meeting within a week, and we've had weekly meetings since. And the mission of the group is to really fulfill the action steps through the Women's March on Washington.
What action steps are those?
So there's 10 action steps over 100 days, the 100 days of Trump's first 100 days. So they evolve and come out every 7 to 10 days.
Who develops them?
That's the Women's March on Washington, which actually there's a website,
Okay.
and Planned Parenthood is one of the major sponsors of that.
So are they giving you a template for your group then? On a national level, they're giving you a template.
So every week or 10 days, they send out or post the action.
Okay.
And the first action was to, send postcards out. The second was to create a huddle, which we had already started, which they call a huddle, a group that meets regularly. So the first group we had met were about 10 people, and we developed a Google Groups page, and it's grown to about 75 members. And at one meeting, we had 45 people attend. It was really inspiring to hear people's reasons why they're coming to the meeting, and that was pretty much, they shared the same, interest of doing something. So having one unified voice, making positive action steps with one unified voice is our mission.
So how do you envision the future to be for the group? How will you accomplish what you've set out to do?
After the 100 days, which is coming up pretty soon, we're just really going to see what happens with the Women's March on Washington and what they put out. But we're looking to, collaborate with a larger group. We also have a branch in Granby, so they've started a Roar Granby group, and we are open to and would like to see other groups in different towns, so Roar West Hartford, Roar Granby, Roar Wethersfield. If someone in Wethersfield wants to start a group, we're open to that. So the goal would be to, we share the same action steps for each week. We complete those action steps and we move on.
So I'd like to discuss what seems really apparent to me is that there are an enormous amount of groups, and there are a large number of people who want to form their own groups, get involved in some groups and not in others, intermingle with some groups. And I'm wondering, Jim especially, what are your thoughts about kind of stepping on people's toes, and how do you envision moving forward if there's so many groups you can accomplish what you're hoping to do?
We look at Indivisible as your one-stop shopping needs for all your resistance opportunities. No, we collaborate with as many groups as will have us. We're almost obnoxious about it. So Action Together Connecticut, Women's March group, which you guys clearly work with. There are people who are more seasoned than all of us who are helping us along. Like, you have to do this, now you have to do this. It's specifically why I chose Indivisible, because it's a guideline, it's not a rule book. But I see this movement, all of us, having steam and wind at our backs for at least 4 years and hopefully going forward. What we have to do next is draft millennials and people who didn't vote, people like my daughter who just turned 18, who wanted to go to the March in Washington and came back on fire. That's who we need to be with us. So I've started Indivisible on several college campuses, and the goal is to have one on every college campus. And hopefully then I won't have to do any work. That's the goal of all of us.
And there's a
right?
lot of beauty in these different groups, and we're I go to Indivisible meetings and I post my stuff on Jim's website, and I just found out in the district we're partnered with in New York, there's a group called New York 19 Votes, and they know the whole area, and we can go there and they're like, here's where you go, here's the doors you knock on. So we all work together and nobody feels territorial.
Do you envision that's going to happen in the future? I'm just asking you.
No, because there's a really broad coalition of opposition here, and it's very organic.
Yes.
This isn't something that's ginned up or paid for by a couple of wealthy brothers, you know?
Right.
This is happening, and we spend our own money. We pass the hat at every meeting, and we pay for postage, and we pay for the hall that we're renting.
Now, I do know the vast majority of my guests have been in mid-age. They're clearly over 40. And I'm just curious as to whether or not you think that this is generational. Is there some throwback to the 60s for any of you? I mean, is there any sense that this is a last hurrah? Or is it just simply that you really have a sense that you need to make a difference and the time is now? Where does this come from?
It's your turn.
Yeah.
Take your kid.
You're the young one.
This has come from the worry that the values of our country have been threatened, and feeling like it's a personal attack on my values as an American, and really being scared. So I feel like if I'm not going to do it, who is going to do it?
So that's my next question. Is that your call to action?
That's my call to action.
What is your call to action? What is the actual igniting part of this?
What fired you up, Jim?
Yep.
Despair. No, I think what fired us all up was the fact that for the first time as adults, you could legitimately be frightened about the future of this country. And I often try to examine, are we just the flip side of the pendulum? Was this how the Tea Party felt?
Right.
And I have to say no. I don't think there's an equivalency. There is, it's a false equivalency. That these are pretty measured people who weren't out there. I mean, I was out, I had a draft card, so yeah, I'm part of the last little wind
Sure.
of the 60s. Maybe that was me.
Sure.
I still have my draft card, but I thought about setting it on fire. So that the notion of activism was alive for me, but it wasn't really called for the way it's called for now. Now it's sort of a patriotic calling. So, and we talk about the semantics of this movement, words like patriot and freedom and constitution. Those belong to us as much as they belong to anybody, and I'm sure these guys will tell you the same thing, that what they're doing is patriotic.
Rosemary, your thoughts?
As I said, activism was just never anything I thought about or did. And then when this all happened, and I didn't say, oh, I'm going to go start a group. I just said, I have to do something. By doing nothing, we're saying this is all okay, which it's not okay. And it just sort of evolved, and now it just feels like the right thing to do for me. And as another note, I take my granddaughters out to marches and protests too, because I think we need to spread the word and get more people out there. And we were talking earlier about where are the millennials in this? My daughter comes with me, so we get a little bit, but a lot of the meetings are people like Jim and me, and we're kind of going, well, where are the young people?
Jim and me. What do you mean?
The hair. You know, sort of, because you would think they would be as fired up, and maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't know, it just sort of sprang from
Maybe they
within
have less
me.
to compare it to or with. In other words, that this doesn't seem as precarious. If you don't have the arc of experience to say, this is not normal, this is very
Yes.
unusual.
That's right.
Yes.
Then things can look normal to you.
That's right.
Things, if you were, I hate the Hitler thing, the Germany thing, but if you were 15 and that happened, that was normal to you.
Right.
You know, this is not normal.
So I did pose that question to one of the panelists in the first segment, Sarai Hertz-Velasquez. And I said, you know, it's an interesting time to be an activist and be 16 years old when you know nothing other than what you see now. And it's just a whirl of emotion. I mean, what a way to dip your foot into this kind of milieu, wouldn't you say? The other thing I wanted to say is I had the good fortune to interview Suzanne Braun-Levine the other day, who's the first editor of Ms. Magazine, Gloria Steinem's best friend. And she was saying to me that if there was one thing that they've come to recognize now, it's that there's a complacency that we all sat with for the last 10 or 15 or even 20 years, that we all thought this is just working like a charm. Things are progressing in a way that we are pleased with. And yet, there wasn't that kind of progression. And in fact, there are things that are going backwards. And so in a lot of ways, this is giving people the opportunity to use a voice that they never had. And the voice happens to be in politics, and it happens to be in our country. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I bet Nina does.
Well, I'm just curious
The
because
sheen has been removed. Yes, I was
Yeah.
living in a bubble, and I actually felt saddened that I was in that bubble, and that it was an aha moment. And we've talked about this in our meetings, in the work group meetings, and people feel quite similarly that, wow, we thought it was the whole country. We all thought we were the same, thinking sort of similarly, and suddenly,
And
no.
the evidence was there that
Right.
we just weren't paying attention.
Right.
But related to that, I think there's a lot of positive things coming out of this.
Absolutely.
And John Larson said the other night that the same kind of thing, which I've been feeling like. For me personally, this has been great. I'm meeting people. I'm feeling positive. I'm feeling active. That I'm doing the right thing, and a lot of other people are. And we're realizing the importance of democracy, and we're out there going, "This is what democracy looks like." And I never would have done that. I would have just sort of sailed through, and
Right.
it's very painful. But I think when we get to the other side, we're going to be better off.
So one of the things that I've come to learn about activism is that words matter. And they matter in the way in which you frame them, they matter in the way in which you present them, and along with that comes a fair amount of diplomacy. And I do note that there has been somewhat of a framework that no one is really going to lead your group. Not your group, but that I've noticed in my segments, no one wants to take responsibility for being the leader. They want it to be kind of an egalitarian across the board. And I'm wondering your thoughts, now that you have just dipped your toe into activism, do you have thoughts about the words you use, about the method in which you pursue it, the framework that you try to be diplomatic and not take credit? Do you have thoughts about that, Jim?
Well, we talk about words a lot. We try not to talk about them too much, but specifically what I was talking about earlier, we talk about words like patriotism and words that have been branded badly, or not branded badly, but used by different groups for different reasons. I'm not sure what's going on there. So the words are very important, and it's important that we take ownership of certain words, yes. And I think there's always a weird thing when you dip your toe into any form of leadership. I don't consider myself the leader of this. I just happen to get to form a Twitter account and form a Facebook group, and people started pouring in. So I just happen to get there first. It's not like I'm the leader of the group. We don't have hats or uniforms or anything like that. But I do notice,
Shirts.
like
I'm getting a shirt.
You are getting, yeah, we are getting shirts.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting shirts too. Yeah. But I do notice, from being in bands my whole life, there's always one or two dogs that pull the sled harder.
Right.
And so, great. There's no guilt or anything. We're not going to make somebody feel bad. Everybody does what they're comfortable doing.
Sure.
And everybody will. What I'm seeing is people rise to the occasion.
Sure. And the same with your two groups, you're both nodding. You feel egalitarian. And
I didn't want to be the leader of anything until John Harmon said, "Well, you're it," and I was, all of a sudden I was it.
John Harmon's in all the groups.
He is in all
I'm meeting with him in half an hour.
He's probably watching it.
Yeah. Hi, John.
Yeah, so you need somebody to organize it, you need somebody to find out where the resources are, but I don't feel the need to, and if somebody stepped up and said, "I'll take it over for you," I'd be fine with it. But I feel good about sort of spearheading some of this stuff.
And what about being in the community of West Hartford? How important is that to the decision to move forward in these groups, or does it have any bearing for you?
We branched out to Granby, so we're happy to spread our wings throughout.
What would you like to say to the people who are sitting on their couch now who are scared to do this kind of work? And they're interested enough to tune into these types of shows or the Activism in West Hartford show, but they just don't want to use their name. They don't want to get visibility. What would you say to those people? Nina?
Yeah, Nina.
Well, I would say that there's opportunity to be involved without having that exposure, especially with social media. And, we have a page on Facebook that's invite only, but only because of people who are conscious of being exposed, perhaps in the job that they work.
Sure.
So yeah, there's opportunities.
Anybody else?
Can I jump in with one thing?
Please.
I would say to people, it's really fun. I mean,
Absolutely.
I have made friends. I've probably met more people in the last 2 months than in the previous 5 years. It's fun. You go to happy hours, you go to meetings, you have something in common, you have something to talk about. Even if you do a little bit, it's just fun, it's rewarding.
Jim?
I would agree that it has to be somewhat enjoyable. So I would say if you are sitting on your couch, get off your couch and come to a meeting of any of these groups, and mostly because it's sort of selfish in a way. I noticed right away, I felt better. It made me feel better. I was meeting all these nice people. They were making me feel better. And then we started accomplishing things. So we're 100 days in, but barely, and we've had some little victories. And I keep telling people, and we reiterate, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Just pace yourself, do what you can. You don't have to go to Washington every weekend. Get off your couch,
It'll be so interesting to see where this leads all of you in the next 4 years. It'll be interesting to be having a conversation 4 years from now and see if the fruits of your labor turned out the way you were hoping, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank the viewers so much for joining us today. We've been talking to newbies on our part 2 of Call to Action. This has been Activism in West Hartford, part 4. We have 2 more parts coming up. We'll be talking to 2 activists next month in exploring the mind of an activist, and then we'll go back to our original panel of 4 people. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Sima Shapiro, your host and producer of Activism in West Hartford, and until next time, I hope you take care.
You talk about hope. You tell us to turn the page. We've got to move past politics, gender, race, and age. You talk about dreams. Remind us to reach again. What's holding us back will only break us in the end. Yes, we can.